cut lumber, you're going to need blacksmiths to build whatever you needed to make to get that mill functioning. So they were. So once you learn the basics of the skill, the basics of how to work iron, then you just applied that to whatever craft was necessary wherever you were, whether it was making nails and chains, or gate hinges and door hinges and whatever.
And now you use a lot of the rebar and stuff?
That's not rebar, that's actually mild steel. So there's all different kinds of shapes and sizes of mild steel that we make. We make about 20 items for the mercantile store. What they sell and make out of that, they replenish our steel. We're kind of a self-propagating little business here. We're not here to make money, we're just here to be open for the public. And so we buy steel and continue to make and function.
All right.
Of course, during the old days, at the very beginning, they would not have access to that because that was all back east. And so especially in 1849, 1850, maybe by the time they started getting enough shipping industries to get good steel brought out, they would have found any kind of scrap that they could have found from old broken down wagons to whatever. And that stuff would have been repurposed into items they needed for, eventually they got steel. Read some of the journals of guys coming over in 1849 on wagons with their whatever wagon train they were coming with. One guy wrote, he said, we stopped the wagons today. This is in 1849. We stopped the wagons today and the blacksmith set up their forge and they were making chains for the wagon. So what that tells you, if you got a little bit of experience with blacksmithing, is they had to have a forge, they had to have a bellows, and they had to get air, just in order to make a chain link, they had to have the bellows, they needed their anvil, they needed their hammers, they needed their tongs, and they needed their iron. They're going to find that out on the prairie in 1849.
No such thing as Home Depot back then.
Yeah, so it's like, so you read that and you go, oh my goodness, these guys brought it all with them. And they would have also had to have the steel and the iron with them. So it's like you put it in the back of their wagons and carried it for whatever they needed on the trail. It's kind of amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, because that would probably take quite a few horses to pull out the iron stuff.
Yeah.
Because of the weight,
well,
yeah.
Well, horses weren't their favorite. Their favorite was oxen. They're a little bit slower, but they're much more plodding,
Yeah.
much stronger to be able to get through. So a lot of them preferred the oxen over horses, or even mules. Mules were pretty rugged, pretty popular on the prairies.
It would be shipped on the rail cars, all right, from back east?
Yeah, but I don't know the exact date the railroad came through, but it wasn't until, I'm guessing, 15, 20 years after the gold rush. I don't think that was pulled off till late 1860s, 1870s. I'm not sure on the date. So originally, this was pretty wild country. In 1848, the amount of people in California was 10,000. In all of California. In 1849, after that original gold rush, it was around 95, 98,000. So 40,000 came overland, and another tens of thousands came across the Gulf of Mexico, Isthmus of Panama, a 60-mile little stretch,
Yeah.
and would wait for a ship coming up the Pacific coast or something to take them up, and they would ride up and get fare to come up. And others were from other parts of across the Pacific, from China, Australia, to all over the place, migrated here in the gold fields. But it grew very quickly, as obvious, from 10,000 to 95,000, and homes and houses, things went up overnight. Eventually, people brought in old. This mill kind of didn't run that long because eventually some people brought in steam engines on the ship and would set up a steam engine and run a mill off a steam engine, or run their mining operations off steam engines. So it made this old stuff here outdated really quick.
Okay.
Kind of some crazy history, isn't it?
Yeah.
So here we got a lot of tools that a lot of blacksmiths general purpose blacksmith shops might not have had. So this tool here makes rings out of straight stock. So you feed the ring in here, you twist this across here and it begin turning up. And then when you wanted to make that ring smaller, you turn each of these down a couple notches and run it through again and make it a little bit smaller, a couple more notches, and you can make a ring that size. You can make a ring that size, pretty much any size you need it, you can make a ring with that machine. There was another way of getting those circular rings. There's a big anvil here. That's a solid hunk of steel. So somebody would come in, if they needed a ring this size, you could mark it where you wanted that ring. You'd get this hot and make that ring out of iron, and you could get it on here. And if you look down here, this doesn't fit perfect, and I can see daylight down through there. So they'd say, get it right down there, and then beat until you don't see no more daylight. So it's the right size, or they'd say beat the daylights out of it. A little piece of machinery like that. Well, obviously the knife sharpening station.
It was like an old-fashioned whetstone, wasn't it?
Yeah. So you get on this like this. This would be filled with water. A little piece of rope, hemp rope coming through there, or whatever rope you had. So you just sit here and pedal. And that water would drip the water onto the stone, and you want that slurry. And whatever stuff you were sharpening, you sit here and sharpen it over that. These were actually not uncommon for a guy to keep one of these in the back of his wagon. Go from little town to little town. And he'd set up, and everybody'd say, the knife sharpeners in town, bring all your stuff down. Everybody gather up all the kitchen knives, whatever they had. They'd bring it down. He'd spend a day sharpening up everybody's stuff. Back up into the wagon, off to the little town he'd go.
I think we need one of those in my job. We have some really dull knives.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, I put a couple knives on this. You know, you need a really good stone. And this one has had many years of use because it's kind of,
It's probably about 100 years old.
yeah, you can see where it's kind of wore a little bit. And I put a knife on it. It makes a pretty rough, pretty rough surface. So you still need smaller stones or lighter or finer stones to finish that up. I would guess that that's a rough grinding, similar to a file.
Something for axes or something like that. Because a knife, if you get it, just grindstones have a chance to take out the protective coating now, anyways.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. Cool. This was fun.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's old school, that's for
Yeah.
sure. You know, it's fun to come down and figure out how they did it back then and kind of do it like they did it back then.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.